Hey, I'm Chris Troy, host of St. Clair County RISA's Moment in History, and I'm here in Wadhams, Michigan to take a look at the man who the community was named after. Born in 1798 in Gosham, Connecticut, Ralph Wadhams moved to Livingston, New York at the age of 7, where he obtained his education. At the age of 16, Wadhams began working in the store of Nicholas Irant, who would later move to Port Huron as a land agent of the Huron Land Company. In 1823, Wadhams followed Irant to Michigan, but instead of coming directly to Port Huron, he stopped in Detroit, where he entered into business with Albert Reese, who served as a general merchant. Wadhams and Reese opened a dry goods firm by the name of Reese and Wadhams and occupied a brick store in Detroit on the corner of Jefferson and Woodward, which was then known as the Smart Block, being named after owner Robert Smart. The duo quickly switched from dry goods to lumber brokering. Reese would sell off his part of the business in 1825 to Henry Howard, who later would go on to become the state treasurer. Now, one day in 1826, property owner Robert Smart mentioned to Wadhams that he had heard that good money could be made in the lumbering business and that land north of Detroit could be obtained at a very reasonable price. Robert Smart, along with his partners Oliver Miller, Thomas Scott, and John Biddle, who were all of Detroit, were also interested in pine lands that were located in St. Clair County, and in fact had built a mill on the Black River. Smith called the location the Clyde Mills. In 1827, Smart sold the mill to Wadhams and partners Howard and W.S. Dzing. So in 1829, Wadhams left Detroit and moved to Clyde. Lumber would not be Wadhams' only interest, for in 1830 he also would open a grist mill, which was the second of its type in the country. In 1832, Dzing sold out to Howard and Wadhams, who continued to lumber and manufacture, shipping some of the lumber by boats back to Detroit, which would come up the Black River as far as the mill, and then rafting the rest down the river. Wadhams would also hold political positions in 1835. He served as a supervisor for the township of Desmond, served as a supervisor for the newly incorporated Clyde Township in 1836, and postmaster of the township of the Clyde Mills, whose post office had been opened by Wadhams in 1835 and remained open until 1872. Also in 1835, served as a delegate to the Michigan State Constitutional Convention from the 7th District. In 1835, the business met losses of $30,000, and over the next 2 years, things would even get worse. In 1837, the firm made arrangements with creditors to sign the property over. In 1839, the firm would completely dissolve. But in 1840, Ralph Wadhams' father, a wealthy businessman from New York, personally intervened to save his son's business from creditors, and in 1844 recovered some of the lumber firm's assets to his son, who continued on to running the mill. Wadhams would spend the rest of his life raising cattle and farming before his death on March 28, 1877. Wadhams never married, reverting most of his earnings back to his family. For Moment in History Extra, I'm Chris Troy, reminding you that history lives in all of us.